Hi guys, this is Frankie Pine, and you're watching my episode of LipRoll with Miss Valerie Morehouse.
Welcome to LipRoll. My name is Valerie Morehouse. I have a unique privilege to work with some of today's most influential and iconic voices as a celebrity vocal coach. This is a show where my guests and I are able to peel back the curtain and kind of bring you backstage and paint a picture of what it's like to be an artist, an actor, a broadcaster, and beyond, while still confronting all the challenges of mental health, physical health, and spiritual health. Welcome to LipRoll. Good morning, everybody. Frankie Pine, thank you for joining us on LipRoll today. We're so excited to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Yay, I'm so excited to finally meet you.
I know, we've talked forever and have never actually met in person.
Oh, you've never met?
No, this is our first time.
Because she's been with me for almost 10 years.
I know,
That's
and I had no
crazy.
idea that she had a yellow sunshine thing about
Yes.
her. And look at that case, my goodness.
She's always in yellow. Everything's yellow. We talk about this every episode. It's
I'm
like-
sorry, people. I'm sorry.
She's always in yellow. She's, the poster girl, Little Miss Sunshine.
Yes, it's a lot of fun. It's just to distract you, and just
I like
answer
it.
any question we throw at you.
Yes, so
Yeah, I like
it's a positive vibe. We love it. So, hello,
good.
Ella.
Hello, Valerie.
Good morning. Are
Good
you awake
morning.
yet?
I am awake. I'm
Good.
awake.
Well, we're going to just launch in and start, talking kind of about what you do and how we met, because a lot of people don't realize what goes into art and entertainment and behind the scenes, how things get built. And you've just been doing this forever and ever and ever. And so I want you just to sort of describe a little bit for our listeners what you do and how you got started in music supervision and what that looks like for you.
So a music supervisor is basically the person gets hired on a film or a television show or an ad or whatever other kind of medium there is out there that really kind of devises the musical identity of a film or a TV show. So I, was a music gal my whole life and wanted to do something to do that promoted music, and I kind of just tripped and fell into this. I wasn't I didn't know that this was a job. I didn't know it existed, and I was very lucky to just kind of like I said, fall face first right into it.
Right.
I thought it was really great. I was reading up a little bit about you, and you wanted to be the next 80s dance star.
Totally. Oh my God. I was in a band. I thought for sure, I was going to be able to do this.
Were you singing?
Yes.
Oh my God. I mean, I knew that you knew. I always would tell Ella, when we'll talk about Nashville later, I said, this girl knows so much about music. It's so impressive. And and we've never really had a chance to really sit down and talk about your path and sort of how you fell into it. But so you were lead singing in a band.
Of course. And I thought for sure, I was going to I had a song that was released in Europe, this little dance thing. And, when you kind of really realize that you're not going to eat, breathe, drink this like 150%, you're never going to be successful at it. And I always thought that there was something else that I could do. And I think if you really are pursuing that kind of path of music and writing and performing, it really has to be your only option.
Yeah.
And I felt like I had other options. So therefore I was like, yeah. I've told so many artists that myself. It's like, if, it's like, yeah, I'm going to come out here, I'm going to get a record deal. And I'm like, okay, that's great. But, and you just kind of, you lay things out for people, and it just makes it a little bit easier to kind of swallow that jagged pill of letting that, that bit of hopeful, maybe this will happen for me kind of thing. It's easier to kind of let it go when you really do know that it's not the end all be all.
He burst my bubble, but in the best way.
In the best way.
I love that. I mean, I think I was 29 at the time, and it was that time to sort of transition, like you said. There's got to be something else.
I was 27.
Yeah, there you
and
go.
It was, for me, that's kind of like my year of the pardon the French, shit or get off the pot kind of thing. It's like you have to really kind of decide, what is your next move.
Right.
And that was where you started picking bands for the Mickey Mouse Club, was it? And that was kind of like, I kind of feel like since you said you kind of fell
what was
into
so
it,
funny about that, I was the receptionist for the Mickey Mouse Club. So I'd be like, Mickey Mouse Club, how can I help you? And
I love that.
but the music gals would come to me and say, well, who do you think? So I'd be like, oh, you should reach out to them. You should call them. And then I just started kind of like being their little source of, ideas of bands to call to have on for Music Day.
Right.
Wow.
I love that.
So it was fun.
Yeah, and then you didn't know it was going to be a job too.
No,
and
you
I think,
God,
I
no.
think Dawn Soler, we had her on, and she said the same thing. She goes, "I didn't even know this was a job."
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, I can do what?
Yeah,
All right.
I can pick music all day.
And so bouncing off of that, so just to rewind a little bit, after Mickey Mouse Club, as you had mentioned, sort of how did you figure out that was a job, and what was some of your first gigs in the industry?
After the Mickey Mouse Club, I had decided that it was my turn to move to New York City and find a job at a record company, because that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So I saved up all my money and I loaded up a truck and I moved to New York City without a job.
That
Good
is
job.
ballsy.
Good job. Good job.
That's really ballsy. Yeah.
And
I want to live in Manhattan.
I lived in Brooklyn,
Okay,
but
we'll take
it was
Brooklyn.
really nice part of Brooklyn. It was, like Cobble Hill area.
Yeah.
And, it wasn't as hoity-toity as it is now. But I did a temp agency. And I was lucky that I got to kind of like go from different temp place, so I worked in a publicity department for MCA Records and said, publicity is not for me.
Yeah.
Then I did some A&R for MCA, and I was like, I don't want to be that girl going and seeing a band every night. And then I worked at like a print place. I worked at a lot of different like mediums to kind of really decide, what it is that I liked doing. I always wanted to stay within the music world. It was just a matter of figuring out what part of it that I wanted to be in. Yeah. And I had sent a bunch of cold resumes, and I got a call on one of the cold resumes. Fantastic. So I had gotten offered a job by Michael Rosenblatt, who was senior vice president of A&R for MCA Records. He wanted me to come on as his assistant, and then I also at the same time got a job with Polygram Records, and that was like at a higher level because I knew licensing, so they were more. I was like, oh well, I'm going to take the higher position job.
Yeah, of course.
and then I just kind of fell into doing totally hits of the 80s, sounds of the 70s, all these like compilation records.
Right.
And I then started helping them decide what should be on the compilation record. And then I got offered the job to do the licensing for the film and television.
That was through Dawn Solar. Is that
No, that was still in Polygram in New York. Yeah. And from there, that's how I met Dawn. She was one of my clients. So she was the one that would be like, I'd like to use, some Motown song. And, I represented the Motown catalog. And I need it for this film. Can you get it approved for me? Okay, and I'd go through my process of getting it approved. And that's just kind of how we met, is through like correspondence through a fax machine.
Yes. Well, I remember the fax machine. All the old school tech, right?
I still remember that. I think we all remember getting our first cell phones. So
because people don't realize, one of the things we talked about Dawn with is that you have to get approval for all of these movies, and you can't just use music. So for listeners that don't know that, you have to buy the songs, and you have to get approval to use the songs, and it can be very expensive, and there's a lot of negotiating.
Yes.
I worked at Maverick back in the 90s, and I met my best friend Teresa out of it, who's a does licensing, and some of the stuff I watch her go through, it's just like, I can't.
Yeah,
It's a lot.
Lots of hoops.
Lots of hoops.
Especially, when a director or producer really really has to have that song.
Right.
So, you go through a lot to try to make that happen for them.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and the thing that kind of shocked me about your story was when you moved all the way out here and then everybody gets laid off.
Oh yeah, that was fun.
Oh, we've been through that. A lot of that was going on in the 90s, right? Where they chopped from the top.
That was a lot of fun. It's kind of like, okay, we're moving you to California. You're going to work for Polygram Films. And I'm like, great, loved it. It's an awesome job. It's how I met Dawn. She was the one that moved me out here. And, and then all of a sudden we get bought by Universal. And that's when, everyone went bye-bye at that point.
Yeah.
There were a lot of layoffs in the 90s because that happened. I worked for a company.
Lots of mergers.
Like do you remember One Stops?
Yeah.
So I worked for Abbey Road. That was my very first job out of college, and we would, deal with all of the distributors, and at that time it was SEMA and BMG and Sony, and different, distribution companies, and then all the labels underneath. But it was such a huge cog that you didn't know existed. And then I want to say DeLorean came in and bought it, and they had laid everybody off.
Yeah.
Offered me a job in Florida. I didn't want to move to Florida, so I kind of. Same thing.
Yeah.
I sort of tapped out.
I'm like,
said,
okay.
I don't want to do this.
So, and, it's like whenever I read anything about your story on this side, it sounds so easy because it says, and then I started Whirly Girl Music, an independent music supervisor. But I'm sure that there was a lot more grinding and, pedal to the metal to get that going.
Well, I mean, one of the things I think that anybody who's, being an independent music supervisor, there's a lot of risk that's involved in it because you never get paid normally.
Right.
And it's never, ever on time when you expect it.
Right.
So, I mean, I kind of made the leap knowing that I had a big movie. So once I knew I had a big movie, I was like, all right, I could probably do this and ride this out, ride the movie out, but still kind of keep looking for other jobs. That are still within like the independent world, not like a job in-house at a studio or something. And, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of, making the rounds, making calls. And when you're first starting, you don't have any real relationships yet.
Right.
So everybody who even takes the moment to meet with you, you have to kind of take that opportunity to really try to get to know that person so that they can, I remember meeting that gal. She was
you
really,
have to make an impression.
Yeah,
so,
you have to really make an impression for people to want to call you back.
Right.
So it was good years, bad years, and it's just, and it always has been, even still today. You have really great years, and then some's like, dang, I ain't working that much. I might want to, make some calls and see what's out there, you know? So it's been, I started the company in 2001.
Wow. So it's been around a while.
Yeah.
And then where did Whirly Girl come from?
It's my hair.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, it's my hair.
Girl. I love
it was one of those things of like, I was going to see like a graphic kind of designer trying to come up with like
the logo,
the
branding,
and,
right?
Just even trying to even figure out like what the name of the company was going to be. So he took some pictures, and I've always been like cheerleader-esque.
Yeah.
So he just like used the word girl in like some kind of sentence about like when he was taking the pictures, and I was like, oh, well, what about Whirly Girl? That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, I love that.
That's
So
the best.
it really, unfortunately, I have had dudes work for me. So it's hello, Whirly Girl.
Whirly Girl.
That's all
I am
right.
a Whirly Girl.
I'm the Whirly Dude.
Yes, I'm the Whirly Dude, just so you know.
But of course, you have Mandy, who is amazing.
Yes.
And we'll have to have her come join you
Oh,
sometime.
please, that would be
yeah.
amazing.
Love
Yeah.
her.
Your Mandy's
Yes.
my Ella.
Yeah, exactly.
That's amazing.
We can't
Love
run
that.
without them.
Right? It's true.
So we met Frankie and I met on Nashville.
Yes.
And I remember when all this sort of came down, and that was a long ride.
It really was.
It was a really long ride.
6 years.
6 years, yeah.
Big.
Back and forth, but really fun. The music was so fun. The music was the best part of it.
I know. I mean, I loved the show. I got so attached to the characters and their stories, but I kind of feel like in this job you have to be attached to the character to know what they would write about or what kind of music they would sing. And I think that's one of the things that we did really, really well on that show is we did a deep dive into each of the characters, and us just getting to know the actors was also another big help in how all of the songs got selected.
Yeah, I mean, that was such a unique aspect of the show, you getting to kind of really sit there with the writers and write the show with the music.
Yes, yeah.
Because you're in it. Now, I don't know if I ever asked you that, and I would imagine you would have always been in like a lot of the writes in the writers' room talking about the music.
I went into the writers' room every week.
Interesting.
And sat there listening to stories. Sometimes I would play them a song and they'd go, oh my God, that's totally it. I'm going to write around it. Then there would be times where they'd tell me a part of the story that's coming up and I go, oh my God, I have the perfect song, and play the song right there for them.
Right.
So, it's just getting to know the Nashville writer scene, and
because that in itself seems like so much work, because you would have to have all these original songs, right, that came onto the show,
3 to 5 per episode, right?
Yes.
And you'd have to have that in your arsenal and have listened to them. That the amount of work, the prep work that it takes somebody like you to do is it's mind-boggling, because you have to have it in front of you so that when you get the call, it's not taking you forever to go through catalogs of music. You kind of have an idea of what you'd like to slot in.
Yeah. I used to have this, I still have it because I haven't been able to get rid of it, is I have a love list that's on my iTunes of all the songs that as I listen, I'll just go, oh, you know what? That might be a good Deacon song. And I'd put it over there.
Yeah.
And then I would just kind of move all of these songs into certain specific playlists for each of the characters, and just kind of be like, all right, I'm just going to wait for the story to come up. Just wait. And then, that way it was always there. Right. So at the end of the final episode, I sent playlists to all the characters saying, these are the songs that Deacon never cut but should have.
Did he put them any on his albums? I know he was doing a whole bunch of releases.
In fact, Claire actually reached out. It was about 6 months ago, asking, do you still happen to have that list of songs? I'm getting ready to do a new record. And, so I love the fact that the songs also touched them, and, they're touring and still playing these songs, which is amazing.
So how do you determine when you get a song, how do you determine sort of if it's an original? Do you have to negotiate that with the writer, how much they want to sell it for? Like, how does that work? So for people that don't understand the inner workings of that.
Yeah. So for like a demo that's never been released before, it's obviously a little bit easier if it's not something that somebody is waiting for to maybe cut. Like we never got sent songs that were on, wait lists for other artists. And, I talk to the writers all the time, but most of them were through publishing companies, and I would talk to the publishers and say, we want to use this song. We're going to have, Scarlett's going to sing this with Gunnar, and for Nashville, for songs that don't really have a big chance of being on radio. You
probably get a pretty good deal because they want their songs to be heard.
We paid everybody very fairly, and each year we try to give everybody a little raise and keep that kind of process going, and we just did so many, I think, like creative things on that show. We got to do songwriter camps, and where, I'd tell just story to a big group of songwriters and, at my house, and they'd go and off into the yard or in the house or wherever and start writing a bunch of songs. And then they'd play them for us, at the end of the writing camp and perform the songs. So
that's the way to do it. It's like everything's in-house,
Yeah.
Nice and tidy.
And it also just, it helped us gear some of the songs,
right?
Story-wise, you know, like there were a lot of songs that just kind of like out of the blue would hit the nail on the head and go, oh my God, that's so perfect.
Yeah.
You know, like Sanctuary.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes, I
like,
remember that one.
oh
Yeah.
my God.
Yeah.
But finding that song took me sending, I don't know, maybe 60 songs for that specific scene.
Wow.
Yeah.
It is. It's a lot. There's a lot of background. It's a very different thing when you're working on a film where you need to use, or you're working on a project where you need to use songs that already exist.
Yeah.
That's a whole different thing. Like
Yeah.
a commercial, right? We're trying to get we want one of the Rolling Stones song, and they're charging you
Exactly.
millions to use
Yes,
it.
yes. For a Hershey commercial
I
or
know.
something.
Yeah, it's like, because I remember being, I got to go on the set on location with them. I was in Nashville for something else and got to see Gunnar and who was it? Luke. And they were doing the pre-record of Can't Help My Heart.
Oh, yeah.
And it was so heartbreaking watching that scene, and it was just such the perfect song. I don't know
Yeah.
whether you remember picking that one, but it was just such a moment in that episode.
I mean, I was kind of like the gauge of, you know, I cry when things affect me emotionally,
Yeah.
whether I'm happy or sad, or, you know, so if the song made me cry while just even listening to it and kind of in my head thinking about the story about, I don't know, Scarlett and Gunnar, or, you know, Raina and Deacon, or whatever the scenario was, if I started to get like weepy or going, you know, that kind of like, oh my God, I'm going to cry kind of
Right.
thing, I was like, oh my God, it's perfect. And that was really the only time, like if they didn't pick that song, I was like, dang,
Yeah.
how could you not pick that?
Yeah,
But, you know.
because everybody, there's so many cooks in the kitchen.
Yes,
That's what I found.
It's not my choice,
Yeah.
you know. Like I always say, I'm the server.
Yeah.
Here's your platter of music. Which one would you like?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know, it's no skin off my nose if you didn't pick. You know, I loved everything that I served up,
course.
Yeah,
basically. You know, so if you picked one of those, I was good. I was happy.
Yeah. And there's such a collaboration when you work on a show like that, because you're dealing with new writers, and you're dealing with new directors, and you're
Yeah.
dealing with people making last minute changes, and
Yeah.
you're dealing with the producers, and you know, and I was just sort of a fly on the wall, like going, I'm just trying to train the singers and
Yeah.
get the best vocal I can. I'm gonna stay out of all this
But
stuff.
we had some good calls, Val.
We did have some
Be like,
good calls.
Yeah.
so how do you want to handle this one?
Yeah, exactly. Well, Dawn and I touched on that too.
Yeah,
You have a
it's
lot
true.
of personalities.
Yes.
You have a lot of
You
things
do.
going on, and you just kind of have
Yeah.
to figure out a way to rally around whatever's going on, good, bad, or indifferent,
Yeah.
and get everybody's highest good.
Yeah.
You know, and that's pretty much what I always tell her. I said, I'm just going to fly low and avoid the radar.
Yeah.
And I
And
just
go-
enjoyed listening to the songs.
Yeah.
You know, I'd be like, yes, I get to hear them before they come
Yeah,
out.
but you know, it was a
But,
magical.
yeah.
The music was the magic of that
Yeah.
show.
It really was.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, you know,
It's a
obviously.
show that will
yeah.
be missed
Yeah.
by me.
I
That's
know,
for sure.
I know. I was very
Yeah.
sad when it ended. It was time.
It
for
was definitely
sure.
time for it to end, but it was, you know, hard to, like, being that involved as a music supervisor is probably the best experience I've
Yeah.
ever had.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
beautiful.
You were entrenched.
Yeah.
Yes.
You had to
So,
be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you had to be. And I mean, obviously, you've got an amazing list. I mean, just going through your everything you worked on is just fantastic. But I wanted to touch on your newest project that you have coming out with Hello Sunshine and Amazon, which is was it Daisy Jones and the Six?
Daisy Jones
based
and
off
the
the
Six.
novel.
Yeah, it's
which-
based
tell
off a
us
novel
bit about that.
was just released this year, and it follows the rise and fall of a band in the 70s.
Fictional,
So-
right? Or is it
Yes,
real?
yes.
Okay,
So it's a
fictional.
fictional band. So again, it's another one of those shows that is, look, I already have goosebumps thinking about it. You know, where it's all original music and, you know, really kind of like creating a whole sound
Yeah.
that, you know, we want to make popular now,
Yeah.
even though it harkens back to that time period, you know. So it's all about the inner workings of a band, you know, the ups and downs, the infighting, things like that. And, you know, you'll get to hear a lot of their story
Yeah.
through the songs as well. So
And now, is the cast, are they all unknowns? Are they?
we haven't even cast
Oh, you
everybody
haven't
yet.
cast it. Oh, that's
Yes.
so exciting.
How exciting.
Yeah. we
I'm like,
have-
can they sing?
Ding, 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 ding.
Well, believe me, that's why we were like one of the very first hires and started talking music right from before even like, I mean, there was one like kind of temp script put together. And that has since changed now that we've progressively moved along in the process. But yeah, we're still casting. We were able to submit a ton of people that are singers that want to act and other ideas of people that we know that are actors that sing.
I'm like, what's the age range? What are you looking for? I've got a whole studio of people. I know it would be great with it. Think of Keegan every time that comes up, an actor that wants to sing. Yeah.
So it's going to be really exciting.
That's great. It's fun just to have something that you can sort of deal with from and sort of create from fruition, based on fruition. Your name came up. I just did a film that they haven't started shooting yet, but we had to do all the music first with our particular actor because she's going to be off doing other things. But Dave Cobb.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So we were talking about you and I was like, oh, Frankie Pine, she's so amazing. You know, it's nice though, when you've been in this business a while and you make these relationships because the people that you had a good experience with that really know their job, it's so fun to pull them in. Yeah. You know, I'm a networker and I've always been that person. I'm like, oh, this person, you got to use this person, you know, and then it happens. And I don't know, it's just kind of a cool thing.
Yeah.
And then we've also wanted to know a little about Mozart in the Jungle as well.
So the producers one of the producers from Mozart in the Jungle is the producer on Daisy Jones and the Six.
Oh, okay.
So we did season 3 of Mozart in the Jungle, and it was the first year that Will Graham came on as an executive producer as well. And like the season 1 and season 2, all of the music was already just like they just used pre-existing recordings. So going into season 3, they were like, no, we're going to write a bunch of different stuff. And they wrote all this kind of stuff into the script that you kind of went, oh God, we have to do a pre-record for that. It doesn't exist. You know, somebody like the conductor's falling asleep. All right, well, the music has to reflect what is happening. Right. So there were so many like last minute pre-records that, you know, on a Friday night we'd get whatever the final script. No one had given us any, you know, they didn't even know it because they didn't have it written. We'd get it on Friday night and then they're going to start shooting on Monday. And we're like,
that makes me break out into a sweat.
Okay, so let's get a session. We're going to do 15 musicians on Saturday at this studio, and we're going to be doing this. And hey, Susie, can you write a piece of music that reflects this? Can you? Yeah. I mean, it was just, everything was just kind of like a jumping through hoops kind of scenario. It was pretty crazy. And on top of it, we were shooting in Italy. So like stuff was happening here. Part of us, you know, Mandy was in Italy for a little while. I was in Italy for a little while. Yeah. So it was just this kind of like, you know,
I actually didn't know that you did the music. I work with Lola Kirk.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. We've worked for years. She's got like a nice little band and a
she
little record
does.
deal.
We've used her music in other shows actually.
Yeah. It's very small. It's a very small world.
Exactly.
Yeah, great show.
Awesome. Yeah. And of course, any stories from Magic Mike?
Oh gosh.
I love how Ella
I want this
asked
story.
that question.
I'm like, hello.
I think the best one is when Matthew McConaughey had called Stephen and said, hey, I got this really cool idea. I think that, I think my character should write a song for the ladies, you know, like as this final performance. And so Stephen comes up to me and he goes, Frankie, can you like deal with this Matthew thing? I'm not really sure.
So the scene on Sex and the City with him was true. When he comes on, he's method acting with Carrie.
Right. Yeah,
did you see that? Carrie, you don't know what you're doing, Carrie. She's like,
So I call up Matthew and I was like, so, you know, Stephen told me that you have this idea. And he's like, oh yeah, I've got this idea. Why don't you come over to my hotel and let's banter around some ideas? And I said, okay. I said, I'll bring a guitar coach. And he goes, great. So my friend Martin and I go, and we had to go up to the front desk and tell him that we were meeting somebody other than Matthew McConaughey.
Of course,
we
Fred
said some
Flintstone or something
yeah,
like
something
that.
like that, yeah.
Hottest guy alive.
And, it's at this beautiful hotel. Like, his hotel room had like a backyard patio.
Whoa.
So we go out on the backyard patio, we're drinking some red wine, and he goes, so I have this, he goes, I wrote some things, and he starts like, rolling out like what the lyrics that he kind of wrote for this. And so then Martin starts to kind of like play and come up with like some little lick. Then I started writing some lyrics. So I came up with the title Ladies of Tampa is the name of the song.
Yeah.
And so we had to go into the recording studio, get Matthew to sing it. And
did he really?
Yeah.
That's
so we
great.
put him in a recording studio, he sang it, and and then he plays it back on set. We're there, and not the best guitar player, even though Martin worked with him, but he did it well enough to fake it,
Yeah.
And we ended up putting it at the end of the movie as well.
Oh, wow.
And we dolled it up. We added more instruments, and I'm singing every background vocal in the song.
The multitasking. That's Frankie Pine.
I love that.
Like when I said
Wow.
if we needed a gang vocal, we could.
Just play Frankie.
So it was, it's like, and then recently the NFL Network came to us when they were doing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for, what is the show on HBO? The football show.
Guys, anyone?
Guys,
They're all
football,
musicians
they're
in the room.
They're like not football.
Ballers?
No, it's not Ballers.
No.
It's the one where they
Google.
Is it
Hard Knocks.
Oh, Hard Knocks.
Hard Knocks.
Got it.
So Hard Knocks calls us and says, we think we might want to use Ladies of Tampa. And I was like, oh my God! I've made it. I've actually made it. They didn't use it, but I was just like, I loved the idea of the request.
Yes,
So
the request.
so
Is
great.
one of those things you kind of want to frame almost.
It
You're like, can you
is,
write
right?
that for me?
It definitely
That's
is.
brilliant. Oh.
Yeah.
So fun.
Well, I think we have time for like one more fun story, two more fun stories.
Oh, okay. We're told
Okay.
two more.
How about
They're loving it.
traffic on traffic?
That was super low key. That that was really just finding the right pieces of music that Stephen wanted, because the subject matter was super serious in that movie. And, so, the way that Stephen had kind of like visually created it is like a different color for every place, that they went. So like all of like the Mexican kind of were more on a yellowish tone, and every time he was in,
I loved that, by the
like
way.
America was in like a cooler blue tone, and I felt like we kind of had to also do that with the music. And we ended up getting Herbie Hancock did some
I love that.
piano playing for the
Bring back the
score.
80s, guys.
So it was just a really cool it was a cool movie just in general, and a great thing to be a part of. And that was actually my very first Steven Soderbergh film.
Oh,
Wow.
Wow.
That's fun though, because as an entrepreneur, you never really know what's going to happen.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, it's like you do the best job that you can. And, I'm also of the mind that, working with nice people, I'd rather get paid dirt and work with somebody really nice than get paid a lot and work with an asshole.
Yeah.
So
100%.
like that's, because I want to love what I do. I still love what I do. So I never want it to be a bad experience.
Yeah.
I think for anyone that's working with me and in connection with me.
That's
yeah,
awesome.
that's important.
Yeah.
I mean, we talk about that all the
All the
time. It's just
time.
life is too short.
Yeah.
Find your team
taking
and
on
your
certain
people.
clients and
Yeah.
if they're going to be difficult and
Exactly.
Sorry.
You're like, I got kids. You've got kids.
I got three
You
kids.
have
I'm like, I don't have time to
have time.
have someone screaming at me in the middle of the night, or it's like I'd rather just kind of like hang out with cool people and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
get to do what I love to do. You know.
And it's also unnecessary as well.
Yeah.
You know, so you just never want someone to be treated badly. And it happens often.
Yeah.
It's just, you have to stay true to who you are in this business, because you are working with so many people.
Yeah.
It's so collaborative.
And as we've seen, it's such a small world.
Yeah.
You know, everything's such a small world. All right. Last story that we will get out of you today, hopefully.
Okay.
True Detective.
Oh, well, that was an interesting one. It was the first season of True Detective, and we were really just brought on as a consultant to. They were having a tough time trying to figure out what the sound should be musically. And so we just worked with the editors directly and trying to kind of like come up with what they felt was the right sound. So my favorite part of the job is the research aspect. So we researched, like, they didn't want Cajun, even though it took place in Louisiana.
Right.
And so, like, what other music was kind of coming from that area? And it didn't matter time period. We were just like researching. And we found out that there was tons of like 60s psychedelic music coming from like that, like eastern part of Texas, Louisiana. And that's kind of where we started, we went there and we started sending music like that. And they were like, oh my God, this is perfect. This is working.
Well, because it was dark.
Yes, it added to the
really
darkness
did.
and the spookiness of the movie. And, so it was just one of those, like, we need help, which I always love getting those calls because, like I said, the favorite thing is doing the research and digging to try to get backstory of music and why the music was made back then, like what was it about it that made them want to write that kind of stuff during that era, and I feel like that's what we're going through now on Daisy Jones. It's like figuring out that 70s vibe, but yet still keeping it fresh and new because it's something that's going to be released now.
Right.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that we're, really putting together a viable band and, that we want to trick people into believing that they actually existed.
Well, because
what I mean?
They have to have their own sound. You're not wanting to replicate another.
We're not ripping
band.
anybody off. We've got to find this unique sound.
That's a true creation.
Yeah,
we can pull that off and then string that through the whole film.
Exactly.
It was really. I was talking a little bit, even though it was all. Queen's music and Freddie Mercury. I working on a project right now with John Houlihan. If you know John. Yeah. And we were just talking about it. I had all these questions for him, and what goes into that kind of a job. But I think being able to create something from scratch there's something more gratifying about that.
Yeah, because you are building something that is unique, and stands on its own.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's so great. Our listeners are going to really love this and dig this interview because I don't think a lot of people that listen to the show, it's very sort of on the nose with an actor or a singer comes on. But again, what we said earlier is just the underbelly of how all of this stuff gets created.
How it gets made and how it gets done.
But so finally, because we have so many people listening to the show who are young in the music industry, what advice do you have for somebody who's interested in music supervision?
I would say the best advice is make phone contact, make eye contact. We're living in such a time period where everything is an email or a text or some kind of social media type thing. And this whole business is about relationships. And it's hard to have a relationship with somebody that you've not had a face-to-face with or a phone call.
Right.
So I would say being in person, calling people. It's nice, obviously, to get an email from somebody saying, hey, I'm, struggling. I'd love for you to hear my music, stuff like that. But if you have an opportunity to come up to me, I'm gonna work harder for you if I've met you.
Right.
That's just my personality.
I
And
love
I
that.
say that, like, to artists also. Like, if you want to get your music heard, come over to my house, play for me. I will work harder for you because I've met you, I've gotten to know you, and if I like you and I like your music, I'm going to do what I can to kind of get it out
That's
there.
why when Scout came in and I said, she's got this cool, interesting thing going on. I said, you'd be better off just going and meeting Frankie and having a conversation and seeing if there's anything you have in common.
And we did. She has sent me music. I even put her up for Daisy Jones and the Six. And
she said,
so it makes me want to work harder because I know that person.
Yeah, of course. That's great advice.
I love that.
Take that advice, people.
Yes, you have to. Otherwise, we're losing it. This country is losing it.
I agree. I'm with you. I'm like, am I getting old or what?
Sometimes I'm like, God, am I really that old to
I
keep
know.
thinking this way?
I know.
Come on.
Listen.
I
know.
I need to get with the times.
So,
It's hard though. It's hard to keep up because it's changing so fast, and a lot of the technology we have it's a blessing and a curse. You have to figure out the balance, because I'm all about relationships, and I'd rather just sit down with one person and chat than go to a party. I mean, that's exhausting to me now. Yeah. So I think, have I always been that way? I think it might be a little bit of age and having children, but I just miss those deeper conversations.
Yeah, exactly.
So obviously we're not going to give your home address out on the podcast, even though you'd like people to come over your house and play for you. So going back to what we were just dissing, how can our audience find you on social media?
Well, we're on Twitter and Instagram. So it's just Whirly Girl Music, at Whirly Girl Music, for both Twitter and for Instagram. And that's a great way to introduce yourself.
All of a sudden, Frankie gets flooded with all this music. Everybody's showing up at her door going,
I try to keep those like totally geared towards, just like the company.
The company,
Yeah,
exactly.
So,
I love that.
Although sometimes I go a little overboard on the Twitter stuff.
Yeah.
It's okay.
The tweeting part is easier for me than Instagram. Like,
Is
Instagram, you got to hashtag all this shit. And I'm like, I don't even know, like, how do you make up the hashtags? I mean, I don't know what it means.
I know.
You want to get the popular hashtags.
So what I'll do is I'll take the pictures. Like if I'm at an event or if Mandy's at an event, we will both do it. And I'll just send the picture to Mandy and go, hey, I was just at this thing, can you do what you're supposed to do with this? I don't know.
It's not just me.
Or I'll post it and she'll go, I fixed it. I'm like, okay, great.
I do that too. I'll go in and I'll see one of Valerie's posts. I'm like, uh-oh. And I edit.
I'm like, this is such a
wrong about that.
Such a soul sucker for me. I mean, but then I find myself keeping tabs on my clients through their Instagram, and I'm like, I gotta go off this thing.
Yes.
So funny.
Anyway, well, Frankie, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been really fun.
Wonderful.
This has been a sunshiny day.
I know. It's been a sunshiny
sunshine.
day.
We've got the yellow, the white, the orange.
Yes.
Yes, and thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having me,
Thank
guys.
you. It's great.